about which ones they take, but to me, I think the Fall River is a good example.
It's a very good route. Spring Creek's a good example, and the main reason is it doesn't have the current or the rocks that will attract stoneflies and will hold stoneflies or caddis for that matter. So the mayfly is pretty predominant on the fall, but anywhere you have a mayfly, you have a spinner. So, if you're fishing on the upper Sacramento and you're fishing blue-wing olive patterns like in Adams or something like that, there's gonna be another stage, which is that spinner. And those are the soft takes a lot of times in those tailwaters. And I'll tell you a story. I was in Montana. I was up there with my wife. It was a hot summer day. The Hells Angels had come to Missoula. I was in Missoula. And they were just hanging out and, having a nice event. The merchants loved it. They were spending lots of money. They were behaving themselves. But the townspeople were nervous. So they had cop cars and helicopters from as far away as Iowa watching the scene. Okay? So you got the roar of the Harleys. You got the helicopters and the motorcycles and the cop cars running around. And then there's a fire up on the Bitterroot Canyon, which is about an hour away. So I'm fishing in the evening underneath this bridge in this flat water with the smell of smoke, the roar of Harleys, the roar of choppers, and I felt like I was in a Fellini movie or some kind of pretty intense movie. And there were this little hatch coming off, and I'm, okay, trico spinner. The trico is the smallest of the mayfly. It's like, I'll tie it down to a size 24, and I'm casting these little flies out there, and they would refuse them. They'd come up, they'd look at it, and they'd go away. And I went into the shop the next day, and I said, well, what are you doing? What was going on? I couldn't figure it out. What were you using? I said, well, it's just a little trico spinner pattern. The guy said, what color? I said, well, black. He said, well, that's your problem. They were fishing for the egg-laying females. They wanted olive flies, all right? So I tied olive flies, size 24, which is not even, maybe 3/16, maybe an 1/8. And I went out the next evening with an olive pattern, same size, could hardly see it in a codfish. So they can get really, really selective. So the dun, this is the spinner on the water. It's a very soft take. This is the dun mayfly, and it tends to be on the surface. You see the wings, the upright wings. It kind of flutters around. It doesn't move a lot when it's on the water. It tends to just drift down. That's why the British taught kind of upstream dry fly, no drag, no motion. It's a typical ring ride, maybe a slurpy sip, a little bit more animation than the dun. There's another rise form for the mayfly, which is this. These two break their ectoskeleton and they can swim out. And as they swim up into the surface, they will get caught in that surface film, and you'll see the fish take them. And the take is that you see the body come up and come down, and you'll see the head and you'll see the tail. And it'll drive you crazy because they're not taking the dry fly on the surface, they're taking something right below the surface. So what I'll do is I might cut some of the hackle off, or I might put it on staffed hackle, and I'll drift it either in the film or right below. And that is fishing to that rise form. So it's just swimming, the emerger is swimming through the water into the film. You can see this head tail rise, it's a little more active.
They sell those in the fly shop, cripple caddis.
Cripple caddis. The cripple, so the emerger is it coming up from above. The cripple is something has happened, they can't get out of their shuck and they get stuck in the film and like that. And the fish will have that same pattern of rise. So Quigley cripple, Quigley was a fly tire up in Fall River and also tied, I tied a lot on the Truckee as well, but the Quigley cripple, the tail is in the water and it doesn't float, it's hanging down, and the wing is kind of up here, so the fly is suspended in the film. But it's that kind of head tail rise form that is indicated, something like that. So this I fish the spinner in the film, dead drift. The dun I'll fish on the surface, dead drift, I might occasionally just twitch it an inch or two, not a lot, just an inch or so. And then the emerger cripple, I'll fish it in the film, but I'll also let it rise and swing in the film. And what Henry's talking about, when your line is swinging at the tail of the drift, that imitates an emerger kind of rising up. There's a technique, I think it's called the lasering lift, where you might even fish it with a weight, where you cast the fly out, you'll let it swing, and then you'll gradually lift it to the surface. That looks like a fly swimming to the surface to hatch. So what I'm trying to tell you is you can have the right pattern, but you need to fish it with the right animation, the right motion, the right technique.
So when you come to a river, is the first thing you do just to sit back and watch the rise forms first?
Yeah.
Because that's going to dictate the bugs and the style of fishing.
I will, if I smoke cigars, I'd light a cigar and I'd just sit. And not only would I watch the water, I'd watch the birds. Are the birds feeding on insects? Where are they feeding them? Are they feeding on the surface? Are they feeding on them up in the air? If they're up in the air, that means that they're flying around up there and they're gonna come down and lay their eggs. I will look at the bank and I'll see, are there bugs in the bushes in the bank? A lot of time, caddis, before they lay their eggs, they'll hang out in a bush and then they'll go out. So yeah, I'll spend time on the bank to, one, look at the water, two, see if I see fish, three, see what's going on with insects, and four, see if I can see any other activity. So there's a mantra, it's just very simple, I think Cal used it, pay attention. Go to the water, pay attention. And even when you're not paying attention, pay attention. This stuff will happen. Again, this is the nymph stage. So, and this is the mayfly. This could be like a blue and olive or something like that. I would, that would be right on the bottom, and with a weight, maybe an indicator, but I would run along the bottom and then I would gradually bring it up to the surface or let it swing at the tail of my drift. I don't just pull it out and recast it. So here are some of the patterns that I use for mayfly. So, and I've kind of narrowed them down to kind of a creamish brown color and an olivish color. So these are my spinner patterns, and you can see the wings are flat. They're just straight out, it's like it's dead, and its arms are out. So a cream and a kind of an olivish brown. This would be like a light kale pattern, which would be, pale morning dun, pale evening dun. This would be probably my favorite dries, the Adams, Parachute Adams, but any kind of bluish. And then this is that emerger cripple that Cal was talking about. I actually tie these, this is snowshoe rabbit hair, which is kind of a cool material. I take a little kit to the river. I have 3 or 4 different colors of snowshoe rabbit. Snowshoe rabbit floats really well. So I have a dubbed body. I have like a Zelon, which is a kind of a fiber that kind of sits in the water. This is a trailing shuck, so it looks like this skeleton of the fish or the bug trying to, he's trying to shed it. And this is going to be in the water like that with the wing up here, that down there. That's an emerging cripple, and there's kind of a tannish and an olive. And then the nymphs, pheasant tail, dark lord, perdigon. I mean, nymphs, especially California, very popular pattern. But for me, the key thing is the silhouette and the size. I'll fish nymphs down to size 24, and I'll fish them up to size 8, which is the rubber legs for the stonefly. So those are the 3 major categories. The ones that are the most common: the caddis, the stone, the mayfly. There's also, I didn't put midges in here. That would be the 4th. So I don't know why I don't have it in here. Midges are really fun to fish. They are a true fly in the sense that they're like a house fly or a blue bottle fly. They have 3 stages: a larva, a pupa, and an adult. They tend to be smaller, not always. Some of the lakes, like Martis, will have like a size 16 or even 14 blood midge. But most of the ones I fish are in their 20s. And the patterns I would use could range from a palomino midge to a serif. These are kind of meaningless, but they're a tubular body that looks a little bit like a worm. So a midge essentially is a little worm that hatches, And then the dry fly might be something like a Griffith gnat, which is just a small little thing with a little fly. And I'll, like I said, especially, those are very common in the winter. It's an all-year fly, but don't underestimate them in other times of the year. So a Griffith gnat in a size 22 or 24 can work really well. And you can get a magnifier glass that allows you to see it, so you can time it. But I don't know why I don't have that in there. So the four main types of aquatic insects would be caddis, stonefly, mayfly, midge, and I'll add midge to this. Streamers, even though it's not entomological, it's not an insect, it's in all the streams. And the bigger the fish, the more likely they are to feed on streamers. They're minnows. So they animate, for me, is the key word. I like fishing them with an aggressive movement, with a jerky movement, or with an irregular retrieve. Sometimes I'll cast them out and let it swing, so it looks like it's a dead minnow. But I find that a live minnow, a live streamer, triggers the attack from the fish more. So a streamer here, you can cast downstream and bring it up. The other thing I'll do is I'll cast over to this bank. And what I'll do is, this is the bank and this is the current going this way. I'll cast over to that bank. I'll put a big mend, so my line is going like that. And then I'll pull this way and it'll pull that streamer right along that bank as it goes downstream. And I might twitch it and I might move it. But streamers are very aggressive movements for the most part. Leeches are in a lot of our rivers. We don't fish them much, but they tend to swim more with an undulating pattern. So that's a really nice fly. It can work really well. I also fish this a lot in lakes, in the still waters of lakes. And here's some of my, sorry, I don't know what's causing that. It is psychedelic. That was that credible edible kicking in. So, sorry about that. Let's see if it's only that one slide, so I won't stay on it long. This is probably one of my favorites. It's basically a double bunny, which just means two colors of rabbit. Rabbit has a lot of motion. I fished this all over the world. I learned about it in Russia, but it's my favorite pattern. This is a Matuka. It's a New Zealand pattern, but I use it a lot in the Eastern Sierras. It's got an olive color. You can tie it in tan as well. Muddler minnow, I like that for minnow. I can also shake it off and fish it dry like a grasshopper. And this is an egg-sucking leech, which is a leech. It's kind of a ham and egg sandwich. So the leech gives a lot of protein, and they see the egg, and it keys them as well.
What size?
This can be as big as you want. This is probably a size 4. This is probably a 6, and this is a long shank 8. It's like a 3x long shank.
Thank you.
Ants is absolutely one of my favorite patterns. I've caught a lot of fish over 20 inches on particularly spring creeks, but also rivers. This is probably my favorite. And this is more of a carpenter ant, which is the really big black ones you see up in the mountains in the spring. This is a cinnamon ant, or I'll even tie this with two pieces of cinnamon. And then this is the black ant. And they love them. And I will fish them both on the surface, but I'll also fish them like a nymph. Because ants don't stay on the surface a long time. They're buoyant up to a point, and then they absorb water and they sink. And I will put them with a split shot. I'll do this on the Owens a lot. I'll put an ant on the split shot, and the silhouette really triggers the fish. And they're a lot of fun to fish. And this is a very soft take. I was fishing in Montana on a big spring creek, and there was a nice fish out in the middle in this very slow, flat water. And I put on a size 16 black ant. It was 6X tippet, really thin tippet. And I got it. It was a 27-inch rainbow trout. The hardest thing about the whole thing is the fly was here. Fish went like this. And I had to sit there and wait till the fish went like that. And then I took it like that and went back under. And I'm like the whole time I was like, so, but it is a really nice pattern. Terrestrials, I mean, these are always in the water. I don't have a worm pattern for you, Jim, but a terrestrial is a good pattern as well. So, different grasshopper, it's a torque grasshopper, the muddler works as a grasshopper. A green hopper, there's times of year when green is better. Cricket, I've caught crickets, caught fish using the cricket pattern a lot. And then beetles. I fished those on the McCloud. I was at a wedding in Argentina in January. My nephew got engaged to a gal from Argentina, so the wedding was down there. We wound up going to Chile, and I was fishing spring creeks with a size 8 beetle, catching brown trout up to 24 inches on beetle. And I'll fish these a lot, and you'd be surprised. It's a lot of protein. They can see it, and I remember fishing Silver Creek, Henry's old haunt. There were 5 hatches going off. There were 5 different insects. I couldn't tell what the fish were feeding on, so I put on a big beetle. Saying, well, you may not want one of those, but here's a big steak. Why don't you see if they want that? And that one. So a beetle also works. Near the edges in particular, and so many people, like I said, wade through the edge of the river, go out to the middle, and they'll fish the middle, or they'll fish the far edge. Most of the time the fish are right on the bank, because that way they're getting the insects from the water, but they're also getting the insects from the bank and the bushes and the trees. They also have the cover of the trees and the rocks from predators. So fish the bank a lot and just come in and kneel down and dap. Eggs, especially in California, anytime you have a salmon run or even a trout spawn, bees, not a huge fan, but they work. These are 2 different egg patterns, a trout size and a salmon size. And then these are the Elvin pattern. So Elvin is like half egg, half fish. They still have the little egg, the baby fish has the egg protein, but it's actually swimming around. And like a few weeks after the salmon have laid their eggs, maybe a month later, they start turning in these Elvin, and you go fish the lower sac in particular. You can weight it in January and February. I've done really well on these. And then this is just a little mylar, like a little stainless steel tape cut into a silhouette with a little mylar around it and some eyes, and I just swing that right on the bottom. And it's like about that big, and it looks like just a little teeny fry attached in the fish or can. So I think those are the key fish foods. I underestimated and didn't do justice to the midge as a fly, so I'll change this and add some midge patterns in there. But here's a couple of books. Like I said, I really got into it through reading, and I continue to study. There's a book on fishing the dry fly as a living insect. And I in part learned how to skate flies by reading about it, but also by observing the pattern of the fly on the water. So I could see how it acted, and I wanted to imitate it. Fish Food by Ralph Cutter. Ralph, you guys know Cutter insect repellent? That's Ralph Cutter and his wife Lisa. They guide up in the Tahoe region. He wrote a book on Sierra trout. He also wrote a book on fish food. He's brilliant. He would get in the water with scuba gear on, take a fly and a fly rod, and watch how the fish reacted. And he had a really good book about that. If you can find this book, it's out of print, Hatch Guides for Western Streams. It has a picture of the insect, and then it has the flies that match it. And then at the back, it gives you the materials list. So this is a really good book. It's out of print. You can find it on Amazon. The last one is a British group, The Trout and the Fly. A lot of good stuff on there, but particularly stuff on rise forms, how to read what the fish is telling you by the way they're taking the fly. So that really is it. And I think 2 kind of final thoughts. One is, study the water in advance and during the day. Keep on top of what's going on. Read the rise forms so you know what the fish are doing, especially for dry flies. Pick food that will trigger a fish's instincts. Fish the food naturally, size, shape, and color, and also movement. I can't emphasize that enough. Movement can make a big difference in an average day and a very successful day. And then change food in different waters. There will be different insects in different parts of the stream. So think about changing food changing the level that you fish it, putting more weight on, fishing it closer to the bottom, or bringing it up more to the top, but also changing the thing. And kind of final thoughts is study to be quiet. Isaac Walton, who's kind of the godfather of fly fishing, study to be quiet, pay attention, be absorbed by what's happening on the water, be absorbed by what's happening with the fish and by the insects and the animals and what's going on. One, I find it incredibly relaxing, and two, it allows you to really feel and see what's going on, so the fish becomes instinctive. And lastly, this is Thoreau, men go fishing all their lives without knowing it's not the fish they are after. So that is it, gentlemen, and
Questions?
any questions? I know I covered a lot, please.
Would you be able to make this slide deck available?
Yeah, I'll send a PDF